Here's a fact that should stop you cold. More than 90% of presidential emergency powers stay active long after the crisis ends. Now ask yourself this: what happens when those powers are expanded, normalized, and defended not against enemies abroad, but against resistance at home? Because right now, something rare and dangerous is happening in Washington. A president is invoking emergency authority, and for the first time, his own party is pushing back. Behind closed doors, phones are buzzing, tempers are flaring, and long-standing loyalties are cracking. This isn't loud protest politics, it's quiet panic. Republican lawmakers aren't arguing about policy anymore. They're asking whether the system itself is starting to slip. When emergency language becomes routine and war rhetoric turns casual, power doesn't just grow, it mutates. And here's the unsettling part. History shows that democracies don't collapse overnight. They erode when people assume someone else will stop it. In this video, we're breaking down 10 critical reasons why this moment matters and why what happens next could permanently change how power works in the United States. If this video made you pause, question, or rethink what's happening, drop a comment and tell us which moment alarmed you the most. We read every single one. We put serious time, research, and care into these deep dive videos, and your support truly keeps this channel alive. So please subscribe. It's just one click, but it helps more than, emergency powers are supposed to be rare, temporary, and narrowly focused. They exist for moments like natural disasters or immediate national threats, situations where delay could cost lives. But here's the danger. Once declared, emergency powers concentrate authority almost instantly, allowing the president to bypass normal debate, sidestep oversight, and move faster than Congress or the courts can. Realistically, respond, what should be a short-term tool, quietly becomes a long-term expansion of executive control. This is why Republicans inside Congress are uneasy right now. The concern isn't just what the emergency is tied to, it's how easily the rules change once the word emergency is invoked. Budgets can be redirected, regulations suspended, timelines ignored, and dissent reframed as obstruction. And the public often doesn't notice this shift in real time because emergencies feel urgent by design. When everything is framed as a crisis, questioning authority suddenly looks reckless instead of responsible. What makes this moment different is that lawmakers are recognizing a hard truth. Power gained quickly is rarely given back willingly. History shows that emergency authorities almost always outlive the day, crisis that justified them. That's why this isn't about party politics. It's about institutional survival. Republicans pushing back aren't saying never act. They're saying slow down before speed becomes the strategy. Because once governance is replaced by constant emergency mode, the system stops functioning as a system at all and starts operating on instinct, impulse, and raw control. If this raised a red flag for you, leave a comment and tell us where you think emergency power should end. Your perspective matters more than you think. We invest hours of research and writing into every video to go deeper than headlines. Please subscribe. It's just one click, but it helps us keep making content like this. At the core of this pushback is a fear that goes far beyond politics. Once a president normalizes unilateral military threats, Congress stops being a co-equal branch. The power to wage war was deliberately split for a reason. The founders understood that war decisions made by one person in moments of anger, ego, or impulse are among the most dangerous choices a nation can make. That's why lawmakers are reacting so sharply now, because rhetoric alone can start the machinery of conflict long before a single vote is cast. What alarms Republicans isn't just the possibility of action, but the lowering of the threshold when military force is spoken about casually, hypothetically, or as leverage. It conditions the public to accept escalation as normal. Advisors prepare contingencies, Agencies begin planning, allies start reacting, and suddenly the country is drifting toward conflict without a formal decision ever being made. Senators understand that by the time Congress is asked to weigh in, the momentum may already be irreversible. This is why the war powers fight matters so deeply. It's not about blocking every action. It's about reasserting the idea that no president gets to act alone simply because they feel justified. Republicans pushing back are signaling something critical, that instinct is not strategy and urgency is not authorization. Once Congress allows itself to be sidelined on war, it becomes easier to sideline it everywhere else. And that's the real fear driving this moment, not ideology, not headlines, but the realization that if this guardrail fails, others will follow. If this made you rethink who should decide matters of war, tell us in the comments where you draw that line. These videos take serious effort, research, and time to make sense of complex moments like this. Please subscribe. It is just one click and it helps us keep going. One of the most underappreciated dangers in this moment is how words alone can destabilize alliances. When a president publicly entertains the idea of using force against territory connected to an ally, even hypothetically, it sends shockwaves far beyond Washington. Allies don't hear those statements as political theater, they hear them as signals. Markets react, defense ministries reassess, diplomats scramble, and suddenly trust that took decades to build starts to fray in days. Republicans understand that alliances are not emotional relationships. They are fragile systems built on predictability. What makes this especially alarming is that ally conflict doesn't require intent to become real. Once military language enters the conversation, contingency planning begins automatically. Command structures prepare, treaties get reviewed, worst-case scenarios are dusted off, and none of that requires Congress to vote or the public to agree. That's why lawmakers are stepping in early. They know that escalation doesn't start with missiles. It starts with normalizing the idea that force is an acceptable option. For Republicans, this crosses from politics into liability. Voters can forgive policy disagreements, but they don't forgive chaos that puts American troops, global stability, and economic security at risk for no clear gain. No senator wants to explain why an avoidable crisis spiraled because rhetoric wasn't checked in time. This is why pushback is happening now, not later. Because once allies stop trusting American restraint, repair becomes harder than resistance. And that's the quiet calculation unfolding behind the scenes. Stopping a bad idea early is far less costly than cleaning up a global mess afterward. If this part made you uneasy, comment with one word that describes how you feel watching this unfold. We spend countless hours researching and writing, so these videos go deeper than surface level outrage. Please subscribe. It's just one click and it keeps this work possible. One of the quiet reasons Republicans are pushing back has nothing to do with Donald Trump as a person and everything to do with what comes after him. In Washington, today's exception becomes tomorrow standard. When emergency powers, military threats, or unilateral actions are justified once, they don't too disappear when the president leaves office. They become precedent, a ready-made shortcut waiting for the next leader who decides the rules are inconvenient. This is where institutional fear kicks in. Lawmakers understand something the public rarely sees in real time. Precedent outlives personality. A power grabbed in crisis doesn't belong to one party forever. It belongs to whoever inherits the office next, with fewer restraints and more justification. Republicans asking hard questions now aren't defending or attacking Trump. They're imagining a future president they don't trust using the same tools with even less hesitation. And that's why this moment feels heavier than past controversies. Once the line moves, it rarely moves back. What used to require debate becomes routine. What once felt extreme starts to feel normal. Senators know that if they stay silent now, they're not just enabling one presidency, they're rewriting the boundaries of the office itself. This isn't about winning the next election cycle. It's about deciding whether the presidency remains bound by rules or slowly transforms into a role defined by personal will. And that decision, once made, doesn't come with an undo button. If you're thinking about the next president while watching this, drop a comment and tell us why president matters to you. These videos take deep research and careful writing to connect the dots. Please subscribe. It's just one click, and it helps us keep doing this work. One of the most effective tools in modern politics isn't policy, it's crisis language. When everything is framed as an emergency, leaders no longer have to explain long-term strategy, trade-offs, or consequences. Urgency does the work for them. Republicans are increasingly uneasy because they recognize this pattern: spectacle crowds out substance. And once the public is locked into fear or adrenaline, serious debate becomes almost impossible. Emergency language simplifies complex realities into emotional binaries: act now or else, support or sabotage, loyalty or betrayal. That framing may generate attention, but it also short-circuits accountability. Lawmakers know that real governance is slow by necessity. It requires hearings, evidence, dissent, and revision. Spectacle skips those steps. It turns leadership into performance, where strength is measured by volume and speed rather than outcomes. What's driving Republican concern is that this approach isn't temporary. It's becoming habitual. When crisis becomes the default tone, it trains both institutions and the public to accept extraordinary measures as normal. Over time, the bar for what counts as an emergency drops lower and lower. Senators pushing back aren't trying to block action. They're trying to restore the difference between urgency and importance, because a government that lives in constant emergency mode eventually loses the ability to plan, to reflect, and to correct itself. And when strategy disappears, spectacle fills the vacuum. And spectacle is a terrible substitute for restraint. If you've noticed how crisis language changes the way we think, comment with one example that stood out to you. We put real time and effort into unpacking these patterns, not just reacting to headlines. Please subscribe. It's just one click, and it helps this channel grow. For years, party loyalty functioned as a kind of political glue. Disagreements stayed private, and public unity was treated as survival. But something has shifted. Republicans are now confronting a reality they can't ignore. Loyalty enforced through fear doesn't hold forever. When support is demanded rather than earned, trust erodes. And once trust is gone, even reliable allies start quietly looking for exits. What's happening behind closed doors isn't dramatic speeches or public revolts. It's more subtle and more serious. Senators are comparing notes, coordinating timing, and calculating risks, not because they suddenly agree on ideology, but because they recognize instability when they see it. When lawmakers begin worrying about unpredictable retaliation instead of policy consequences, the relationship stops being cooperative and becomes defensive. Governance turns into damage control. This is why this internal pushback matters so much. It signals that fear is no longer an effective binding force. Republicans understand that a party held together by intimidation eventually turns inward. Public threats may silence some voices, but they also harden resistance in others. And once lawmakers begin acting to protect institutions rather than personalities, the political math changes fast. This isn't a dramatic rebellion. It's something quieter and more dangerous for any leader: the slow withdrawal of confidence. And history shows that once that process starts, it rarely reverses. If you've ever seen loyalty turn into pressure, share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective adds to this conversation. These videos take serious effort and careful analysis to tell the full story. Please subscribe, It's just one click, and it truly helps us continue. One reason emergency declarations make lawmakers nervous is simple but powerful. They change what people are looking at. Oversight is slow, technical, and quiet. Emergencies are loud, emotional, and urgent. When a crisis is declared, the spotlight moves instantly, from documents and deadlines to speeches and threats. Republicans are increasingly aware that this shift isn't accidental. It's a proven way to outrun scrutiny without directly confronting it. Oversight asks uncomfortable questions. Why were timelines missed? Why were promises delayed? Who made which decision and when? Emergency framing makes those questions feel secondary, even inappropriate. Lawmakers pushing back see the risk clearly. If every moment becomes a crisis, then accountability becomes a distraction rather than a duty. And once oversight is treated as optional, the system loses its ability to correct itself. What truly alarms Republicans is that this tactic works best when the public is exhausted. Constant urgency wears people down, making it harder to track facts or demand follow-up. Senators know that a democracy can survive disagreement, but it struggles when attention itself is manipulated. That's why some lawmakers are drawing lines now, not because they oppose action, but because they understand that a government without sustained oversight doesn't just make mistakes, it stops learning from them. And a system that can't learn eventually breaks under its own blind spots. If you've noticed how quickly attention shifts in politics, tell us in the comments what gets lost when it does. We put a lot of time and care into connecting these dots for you. Please subscribe. It's just one click, and it helps us keep going. When leaders declare an economic emergency, it sounds like immediate relief is on the way. Lower prices, more jobs, faster results. But lawmakers know the reality is usually very different. Economic emergencies rarely deliver quick benefits to ordinary people. Instead, they tend to unlock fast-track permissions, relaxed regulations, and special access that overwhelmingly favor large corporations with the resources to move first and move fast. This is where Republican skepticism grows. Senators understand that major economic projects take years, not months. Infrastructure must be built, contracts negotiated, supply chains adjusted. Declaring an emergency doesn't change those fundamentals. It just changes who gets to bypass scrutiny. While the public hears urgency, insiders see long timelines and profit structures that advantage multinational companies far more than everyday voters struggling with costs right now. What worries lawmakers is the disconnect between the promise and the payoff. When emergency powers are justified in the name of the public good, but primarily benefit powerful interests, trust erodes fast. Voters may not follow every detail, but they recognize when outcomes don't match the sales pitch. Republicans pushing back are trying to avoid being tied to a move that sounds populist but delivers elite results. Because once people realize an emergency didn't help them, the backlash doesn't land on corporations, it lands on the politicians who enabled it. And that's why this reason matters so much. Emergency economics often look decisive in the moment, but disappointing in hindsight. If you've ever felt promised relief but seen little change, share your experience in the comments. Your voice adds real value here. We put serious effort into breaking down who actually benefits from these decisions. Please subscribe. It's just one click, and it helps us keep making videos like this. When disagreement turns into intimidation, something fundamental breaks. Republicans are deeply alarmed not just by policy disputes, but by the tone and tactics being used to enforce compliance. Public threats, private pressure, and career-ending warnings don't strengthen leadership. They expose insecurity. Lawmakers understand that once fear replaces persuasion, governance stops functioning as a cooperative system and starts operating like a loyalty test. This matters because Congress isn't supposed to work on intimidation. Debate, dissent, and negotiation are not signs of weakness. They are the mechanism. So when senators begin worrying more about retaliation than outcomes, decision-making degrades, votes stop reflecting judgment and start reflecting survival. Republicans pushing back see this clearly. A system where lawmakers are pressured into silence is one where bad ideas travel faster than good ones because no one feels safe slowing them down. What truly concerns GOP senators is that this dynamic turns inward. A leadership style built on threats doesn't just target opponents, it eventually targets allies who hesitate. That creates a chilling effect where experienced lawmakers disengage, avoid responsibility, or quietly distance themselves to protect their own credibility. Over time, the system loses its most stabilizing voices. Republicans aren't reacting out of emotion here. They're reacting out of recognition. They've seen this pattern before and they know how it ends, with weaker institutions and stronger impulses. That's why resistance is forming now, not loudly, not dramatically, but deliberately, because once intimidation becomes normal, restoring trust becomes almost impossible. If you believe disagreement should never be punished, tell us in the comments how leaders should handle dissent. These videos take real effort, care, and independent thinking to put together. Please subscribe. It's just one click, and it helps this channel survive and grow. The final reason Republicans are pushing back may be the most human one of all. History is watching. Lawmakers know that years from now, no one will remember the talking points, the press releases, or the excuses made in the heat of the moment. What will remain is a simple question attached to their names. Did they act when the system was under stress, or did they stay silent? And that realization carries real weight inside the party, right? Now, the final reason Republicans are pushing back may be the most human one of all. History is watching. Lawmakers know that years from now, no one will remember the talking points, the press releases, or the excuses made in the heat of the moment. What will remain is a simple question attached to their names. Did they act when the system was under stress, or did they stay silent? And that realization carries real weight inside the party, right? Now, the final reason Republicans are pushing back may be the most human one of all. History is watching. Lawmakers know that years from now, no one will remember the talking points, the press releases, or the excuses made in the heat of the moment. What will remain is a simple question attached to their names. Did they act when the system was under stress, or did they stay silent? And that realization carries real weight inside the party, right? Now, the final reason Republicans are pushing back may be the most human one of all. History is watching. Lawmakers know that years from now, no one will remember the talking points, the press releases, or the excuses made in the heat of the moment. What will remain is a simple question attached to their names. Did they act when the system was under stress, or did they stay silent? And that realization carries real weight inside the party, right? Now, for many Republicans, this isn't about winning the next news cycle. It's about how their decisions will look once the urgency fades and the records are reviewed. Emergency declarations end, presidencies end. But votes, silence, and moments of hesitation don't disappear. They become part of the historical record. Lawmakers understand that being remembered as the one who went along with it is far more damaging than being criticized. In the moment for pushing back, political pain is temporary. Legacy is permanent. What's changed is that some Republicans now see inaction as a choice, not a neutral position. Staying quiet no longer feels safe. It feels complicit. That's why resistance is emerging, not through grand speeches, but through procedural moves, quiet coordination, and strategic lines being drawn. These lawmakers are calculating not just political risk, but moral and institutional cost. Because once emergency powers become routine and checks on authority are treated as betrayal, the damage doesn't stop with one leader. It spreads forward. And that's the heart of this moment. Republicans are realizing that the safest move for themselves and for the system they still have to operate within is to say no before saying yes becomes automatic. Not because it's easy, but because history is unforgiving to those who confuse loyalty with responsibility. And this time, the record will be clear. If you were in their position, would you speak up or stay quiet? Tell us honestly in the comments. We put a huge amount of time, research, and care into making these videos meaningful. Please subscribe. It's just one click, but it makes all the difference for this channel.